put the tweet out and how we're doing today. It's a few minutes before 8, but I figured we go ahead and get started. I'm here. Somebody's here, so. First things first, there is maintenance today as usual, and it's going to be a lengthy one. If I go by the announcement, they're approximating 5 hours of downtime today. So again, if you're going to be dropping in on these Wednesday broadcasts, feel free to save it for another time or when the downtime is actually up, because if you want to get some playtime in while the realms are up, be my guest. You don't have to go out of your way to drop in with us while we're live. It's appreciated, of course, but I'd much rather folks get their WildStar fix while they can, especially when the downtime for today's maintenance is going to be so long. 5 hours is pretty quite a few. Supposed to be regular maintenance, regular time. That would be 4 a.m. PDT, 1 p.m. CEST time. So for those of you that are familiar with the Wednesday maintenance, you know, the usual is going on. It's just going to be a little bit longer than normal. Let's see. Another thing I want to mention is we've been having some sneak peeks on the PTR, the player test realm, for the new communities feature. Basically, the way I understand it, communities allows up to 5 plots to be basically linked, physically linked to each other, so that when you come in on a community, you have access to all 5 plots with a communal area that can be decorated. I myself haven't had an opportunity to go in and test it. I've been kind of sort of on the edges, kind of paying attention to what people have been saying on Twitter, in the chat, and in the forums specifically, or especially, to kind of get an idea of what folks were finding, some of their first impressions of the feature. I think the biggest one is the costs involved. I don't know if they have plans to modify things from the last time we talked about it, but as I understand it, it's a fairly expensive investment. But I suspect that's not only to kind of make it a little bit more special for those that actually have the funds and the willingness to invest that much into something like this, but also that they consider it a kind of a group, like a co-op thing. They don't expect individual players to build a community on their own. I think the goal was to get builders to work together. So they assumed, and maybe continue to assume, that builders would work together to raise the funds as a group, and thereby the cost being split between 5 players. I don't know if it's possible that you can create a community by yourself by inviting some of your alts to the community. Last I checked, that wasn't possible. But like, say if you join with a partner and then invite each other's alts that way, I think that's more a likely scenario. But again, I don't know all the ins and outs. But I did stop by the forums. It's in the housing subforum of the official forums. There is a thread by Thefia. It's entitled Community Housing Guide PTR version. Keep in mind that any information in this thread is subject to change as things are updated, modified, and so forth. But it gives a really good explanation of what the community system is, how to get a hold of it, what exactly it entails, things about like the ranks and permissions and where you're allowed to build, information about decor counts and how it's divvied up between the community members, and things like the landing pads, renowned vendors, etc. So it's very thorough, and from my experience in watching Thefia post in the past, they're very good about updating. So any new information they come across, I'm sure they will provide it as necessary. But for those of you looking for some information about communities and have yet to experience it, in person on the PTR, that's a good way to kind of get acquainted with the system, what you can be expecting. Again, this is PTR version that we're talking about, so things are subject to change. In fact, I think one of the issues or bugs that people are bringing to the attention is that the landing pad apparently for each individual plot shifts a little bit on the PTR currently for the communities feature. And a lot of people are fussing about that because they want the landing pad to stay where it was. We already had the dealings with when the plots became larger in size, how people had to adjust from bringing the teleport entrance build up further out to accommodate the move. And I don't think people want to go through that again. It's just a slight shift. If you look in one of the threads there, I think there's a bugs thread in the PTR section that shows a comparison of what it looks like before communities and what it looks like after, and it's just enough of a nudge where it would probably ruin a lot of people's builds, especially those that like to cover up the entrance. So but I think I saw where there was a developer that had posted saying that they had made some adjustments to accommodate that or to fix it, but it maybe just didn't make it to the current PTR version. So fingers crossed that that won't be an issue later. But again, if you are looking to provide some input to make sure those things like that are addressed, then get yourself onto the forums and voice your opinions and suggestions and all of that. But definitely check out the community housing guide that Thefia has put together if you haven't been able to check it out in person, so that you can get acquainted with what's currently in works, how the system is actually utilized, I guess, how it works, as far as how many players. I think up to 20 people can be allowed to actually build on it, but only 5 actual plots are permitted for connecting onto the plot. So I guess the roommating or whatever can be a little bit more broad in that sense. I don't know, who gets permission for what. I assume like the leader would be the one that starts the community, and then the others would get certain building rights for each thing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's something to look into. I'll definitely be reading a little bit more into it myself. But again, this is just PTR. No specifics yet that I know of as far as when it might go live. They just have been talking more like later in the year. So fingers crossed that all of these little things are ironed out before that happens, and I look forward to seeing how people will utilize it and expand upon their ideas and stuff. So yeah, good morning, Poi, and anyone else that happens to be joining us this morning. And thank you, Poi. I saw the thread. I think it was. I want to say it was Spanky, but that might not be the right name. Someone was asking about some housing advice, and you linked my Twitch stuff and the YouTube link. So I appreciate that. Word of mouth is a good way of advertising, so I appreciate it. And I hope they find the videos helpful. I know we don't embark too much on actual creation-wise lately. For the last few months, I guess, but hopefully these tour videos will still help a lot to inspire folks. And that is what we are here for today. It is another Wednesday. That means it is Tours Day, and we are back on Entity region. Last week we checked out a couple of lovely plots on Javit, and that means we're back on Entity this week. We do visit both regions, both factions, although I think I've been kind of sticking with Exile side a little bit too much, so maybe I'll try and focus on getting some Dominion stuff up in the next few weeks. But entity side, yes, we are currently on, let me get the name here, Volk Barendust. That is the name of the player. The plot name is Borkenbork Island. I don't know where they come up with these titles, but it was pretty eye-catching. The only thing I noticed when I first visited here was I wasn't able to access what I presume to be the bunker house. You'll see what I'm talking about here shortly. When you first come in, you can see how they've got the ground right up level with the platform to cover most of it. So you realize that when you're here, you actually come in and your head's like the only thing visible, and you have to kind of hop up out of the dirt. But that means that most of the plot, I guess, is on a bit of a raised elevation. So where the entrance to the bunker would be, I think it's too high, so I can't actually access it, even though they've marked it to let you know where to find it. So I don't know if maybe I'm just not angling my camera just right or what, because maybe it kind of slants down enough that you can actually get to it. You'll see what I'm talking about here shortly, but we've seen some other plots in the past. Maddie is an example I can think of where they had the plot kind of covered and entrance isn't necessarily visible, but if you get close enough, the little uh, uh, interactive button, I guess, will pop up. But I couldn't get this one to pop up, so I don't know if it's just me being unable to angle it just right or what. But anyway, I'll try it again while we're here, but if I am not able to access it, my apologies in advance to both you guys, the visitors, and to the builder themselves, because if there's something in there that they really want people to see, I may be unable to access it, so apologies in advance. So yeah, Borkenbork Island. Again, I assume that uh, this part here appears to be the upside down massive umbrella tree. You can see the root here. I don't know what they're using to get it even bigger. The horizon goes out pretty far. I don't know if it's just like supersized or what. It's just like these little slopes here. These, you can tell how the puffs change, the little dirt that you kick up when you're walking. This one has brown. That's the clue that it's more than likely the massive umbrella tree. If it goes white, that means this is an upside down snowy hill. It's cheaper of the two to get a hold of, but depending on, the luck of the items you have available, some people prefer to use the massive umbrella tree in this part because you can get away with it being smaller. If you're having to use the upside down snowy hill, I think it has to be pretty big before the boundary will allow you to place it over the front like this. But for those of you that have a hard time figuring out how that works, there is a thread in the housing sub forum that kind of gives tips and even KBT codes that people can use to be able to place various items, including stones, and I think they've gotten some of the cover part pieces and such to work. For those of you, it just takes a lot of experimentation. Generally speaking, you need to find items that are hollow um, uh, to kind of trick the boundary here, because there's like a border that's kind of circular here. You trick it into thinking that there's nothing there. So usually the items have to be oversized quite a bit to be able to fit, and then you have to place it just so, and it's a little tricky. Even I have like major problems doing that. So if you don't get it the first time, just keep at it. Again, there's a lot of items that work for it, but it's kind of like a hit and miss as to which ones are which, because not everything is hollow, and not all hollow things work properly. It's just a trial and error kind of thing. So, Borkenbork Island appears to be kind of like a little vacation getaway. If you're looking for something along those lines for a, say, a an RP troop that's looking for a vacation spot, um, or a guild group that's looking for a unique place to meet up, that kind of thing. So you can see that the water extends quite a ways. Just going by how the character actually sinks into the water, I can almost pretty much guarantee that they're using the exotic silver chalice. The base of it, if you turn the chalice upside down and use the base and enlarge it really big, there's no collision directly on the bottom. That's what allows your character to kind of sink through. Now, as you adjust your camera, let me see if I can pull it out here. You'll see that it actually disappears if you get in line with the chalice. So it only looks good from up above. It is really shiny. You can see how the sun is reflecting really bright off of there. But it does have a very lovely blue color. And again, like I said, it has that loss of collision. The collision is like a little further down inside the stem of the chalice. So that's what permits your character to sink down into the water. The bigger the chalice, the deeper the water appears to be. So if you're going for like a little pond size, then it might be ankle deep or something. But up here you can see how she's like almost, as I go further in, the water depth becomes greater and greater. That's because I think they're using a single chalice for this entire plot, and it just works really well. We've seen it in many others. Um, it's probably the most realistic sort of still water item that we have. But there are alternatives if you can't get a hold of the chalice, since it is kind of a rare, world drop. Um, there's a layered glass that you can use that works really nice. There's other glasses you can use. There's the upside down frozen squiggly thing. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. It's like a little, looks like an anemone. I can't say that word, but frozen spore, I think is what it is, or something sponge. I don't know. And the only thing about those items is they don't have the luxury of you being able to sink into the water like this. All the others are solid, so it's like you're walking on the surface of the water as opposed to going inside it like you see with the chalice item here. As well with the layered glass, I think most, if they use the glass for water features, they tend to use like 3 or 4 layers. If you go any farther beyond that, it starts looking a little too white and more like ice. Especially because you can walk on the top, it almost feels like you're walking on a frozen pond kind of thing. So yeah, there's that. Now there is, of course, the winding rivers, but I think a lot of people steer from them for this kind of water effect because, one, the animation looks strange when it's sized up, plus you get the sound effects along with it. So it's just a matter of what you're able to get a hold of and really what kind of water feature you're aiming for as to what will work or not work for you. The dock here, the little strip of whatever, is just decking pieces with pillars. I love the little fishing pole here. I've seen some use the strings of the clothing lines. They like those because it kind of moves. Same way with the balloon string. They'll use those to kind of give the idea that there's actually something already on the hook. This one, though, is using the, I think it's the spotlight, the red one. And it's just the wire. You can see a little bit of the wire there. And it's like the little pole sticking there. It's a good way of doing it. Another one is if you have access to the hangman's noose. That's a good one. It's a little bit rarer item, and I think most people don't want to use it because it's kind of a cheap way of using that really super rare item, but it's still a possibility. Sparking wire is another one. Probably not this Size, I think it'd be a little on the thick side, but it's still a possibility if you're using a smaller or it's closer to the surface, then you don't have to worry about sizing it up too much. Trying to think what else off the top of my head. Usually it's like string items or like little poles and things. But it's always cute to see people's ideas of what a fishing pole would look like. I've seen some actually go in and actually have the little rod, little twisty thing on it to be able to reel it in. But this is a good example of just how you can keep it simple. It's just a couple of items and you know what it's supposed to be. So as we discussed, the dirt is basically the upside down snowy hills, and then they've used stones, including the stepping stones from Starcom and the regular gray stones from the vendor, to kind of patchwork these ground pieces together, because the way the edges of the snowy hills and stuff like that, they're like razor thin and they don't mesh perfectly together. It's like it's like having like panels or something crisscrossing. So you always have to have these little patchwork bits. A lot of people use rocks or walls or a lot of greenery to kind of hide those imperfections, because this is one hill and this is probably another one right here. So it's two hills trying to blend them together, and this is what they come up with. Works great. So on this larger part of the island, I guess it's the only island, you have the main building. And just going by the sign, I presume this is a restaurant for this little island getaway. Excuse me. So we're just going to check out this place. Now, most of this, I think, is exile floors and decking pieces for a lot of the walkways up top. The door's not one to open, is it? Just clicking on it. I know it's not complete. Obviously, they're wanting some kind of a restaurant type of build in this area, but it could be used as I mean, it doesn't have to be a restaurant. Someone could put in some rooms for lodging. This is a little office. I like how they've used, I want to say these are parts of the fence or the gate, and they're using it as a desk. And then I'm not sure what's on this side. Yeah, presumably restaurant, maybe one to be like some bathroom area. This would probably be some storage or some such. And then this leads to the upstairs where the decking pieces are. I'm sure they could extend this to be like some outdoor dining. Now, again, remember, a lot of times when we come across these plots that look unfinished like this, there might be a reason, especially as you start checking out the detail that they put in the rest of this. It probably doesn't seem like it, but getting up to a decor count outside it goes by super quick, because you're not only dealing with the structures or the decorations in the structures, but you're also dealing with any landscaping that you may have put together, which includes all of these stones, the water, the trees, the bushes. All of that adds to the count. I'm trying to figure out how to get up top here. I don't see any kind of, I guess we go this way. I don't see any actual steps. But I love the construction of this building. That's something else I'm not too terribly good at, is architecture. So checking out how they've put this together using some of the corner pieces of the decking, pillars, how they've used the railing. It makes an interesting build. You end up with basically 3 floors. So even if they do the dining part down here, maybe these are some upper areas, maybe a little bit of a bar, open, outside bar, um, a little dance place, or maybe it's just a place for couples or a VIP area. But I love the construction of this building so much. It's just an interesting shape and combination of how they've done the roofing as compared to the rest of the house. It's just I love the look of this. Even if it's incomplete, because sometimes it's nice to see things that aren't completely finished. You get a better idea of how things are put together. But there's symmetry here. I just love this building. I don't know why. Okay, if we go on down this side, you see another dock. And this time, instead of using the decking pieces, they've used one of the keyhole windows, which I thought was kind of clever. It's basically one piece. You kind of know what it is, and you would assume ships or boats or something would come out here. Maybe somebody would, go fishing as well. And then this is where the bunker house would be. You can see that they've marked it. You can kind of tell the location just because of the discoloration, but I can't seem to get the little button to pop up. I've like walked round and round trying to get it to show, but this is where it would be, and sometimes I think I see it flashing, but it doesn't stay up long enough. I don't know if I'm just really bad at angling it. I've tried zooming in and like making the water disappear so I can just see the ground, but that doesn't seem to help. So maybe you'll have luck if you come and visit this place yourself, but yeah. So the only fab kit that I've seen being used is the geyser one, and it's specifically so that you can make your way over to the upper area here. They're using the Orin landing pad for this little decoration here. Decking pieces to join the different little raised sections. And the raised sections themselves, you can see it a little better here. It's basically the hollow cylinder with, I guess, a solid cylinder inside so that you get this little bit of a wall. And then in each one, they've uh, made each one unique. So you've got like the little cookout area here where people sit, enjoy the bonfire. This one's more like a little greenery type of deal. It's just some overgrowth with one of the trees set inside it. This one is kind of like a garden featuring some of the spring decor, including the rainbow, the saucer from the tea set, and a lot of the little flowers. On this side, excuse me, again, a little different. It's a faux door here. I think that's just an exile wall with a bottle for the handle. And they've got it all enclosed in glass, but it gives the impression that you can actually get inside here. I don't know if maybe it connects some way somewhere else, but you can see how they've used the decking pieces. Looks like a bedroom. Domes for the tops. I just like the uniformity of how each little section of these little man-made island, I should say, resembles each other. Now this part here, I'm not sure what this is. If it's, it looks like pillars, just tons and tons of pillars. Again, that's part of that detail that I suspect ate up a lot of the decor for this exterior part. These appear to be granite pillars. You can see them kind of flashing a little bit, making this little walkway here, the little lip. But I love the color of it, and it matches really well. You almost can't tell that it's actually different material from whatever else is being used. The concept too of these little connecting eyelets, or whatever you want to call them, is also a kind of a, not a common theme, but a favorite theme for not only ground type of buildings in this case, but also up in the treetops, you know, with the rope bridges and such. Okay, here's another one. It looks similar to the one we just looked at, except this actually has a functioning door, so that we can go inside and see kind of how it looks. So down here we have the living room. There's a little bit of a, I don't know if this is meant to be like the kitchenette or whatever, but that's like metal crates. And then a bowl inset here. This is presumably the bathroom. Again, it's missing details, but as I said, just the construction itself might have cost quite a bit. But I love the simplicity of it. This is a cute, I mean, this is almost like these are like little mini cottages of some sort, like summer resort cottage. You go and you get your basic areas, and again, same pillar arrangement as the one over here. And then we have a final one. This one's a little bit more detailed. So here we have the kitchen. They're using the cellar entrances as little containers for the different foods. The tray is, I think it's called the Dominion Conference Table. They've just sunk it down. It makes an excellent little cutting board arrangement here. The bowl for the sink, they've inset one of the stoves into the counter there. Over here we have the Oran themed desk, and they've just lowered it down so you don't see the legs so much, just barely, and it's more like a little nice table kind of deal. Here's the shower or bathroom. This would be a great place for setting up displays of books or toys or collectibles. A library section here with some reading chairs. Upstairs, of course, is the bedroom area, or this is the lounge, I guess. I presume this is meant to be like a widescreen TV. It almost could be mistaken as a billboard, so if you had this on an outside next to a bar or something, it could be considered that, but I presume this is meant to be like their little TV, flat screen TV. It's 2x4s. I suspect this back part is either a travel poster, since it's pretty narrow. If you have it a little thicker, you could probably get away with using the, what's it called? I think it's maintenance platform is one of them. Or the graded floor panel, the back side of it is a nice gray. And of course the TV image is just one of the neon signs. And you got the little balcony here. Again, decking pieces for most of this flooring. And it looks like hover part pieces for the body of the structure. Notice how they've had to patch those little bitty decking staircases. That's why you see gaps here and there, because they've had to angle it up. Making spiral staircases, especially out of a material like this, is tricky. Um, just from experience, like for my the mall, making the circle of the building was easy peasy, but getting a staircase to gradually go down without making it so that you had to jump up the stairs didn't follow the traditional, perfectly smooth shape. And there was a lot of finagling in that, and that's why I think there you see a little bit of imperfection, but I think that's out of necessity more than anything, because there's no way you can calculate. Well, I guess there is probably if someone's really smart, but for me, there's no way I could calculate, where I needed to start the head of the stairs, where it's going to end, and just how many degrees each one needs to be twisted to get it to work properly and look nice and neat. So the final floor is the bedroom, of course. Again, decking pieces for most of that, and then the hover part pieces for the walling, with its own little balcony out here. Again, I like the symmetry, the matching, even though each building is slightly different. They're similar enough where it just works together. I love this little idea though. Excuse me, getting all choked up. Again, when you're doing an exterior build like this, these details, like with all of the pillars being used for this part, all the pieces used for making the buildings, and then all the little details to decorate it, it adds up super fast. So it does take a bit of planning. I think they went really smart with the building constructions, because they're, I don't want to say simplified, but they are sort of, compared to some of the buildings we've seen in the past. They've got enough detail and variety that they're interesting, but I think it was a necessity to kind of keep them on the simple side as best as possible, so that the details elsewhere could be incorporated. It's, especially on this exterior part, it's really a give and take as far as how much detail you put where and when. If you have the luxury of having, it's the difference between doing a custom house on the outside, and all of the details that that entails, as opposed to using like a prefab home, just kind of covering the top of it to make it look a little different, and then using the advantage of having that interior to really go all out on the details on the kitchen and bathroom and all of that. You can't have both. Well, I don't want to say you can't either, because I've seen some that have made it possible, but it's extremely difficult to do. I think most of those that have managed to do it with a prefab home and all of the details is where they have what I call a mini or a macro plot. They kind of zone off most of the plot and focus everything into a smaller area. That way they don't have to spend so much on landscaping and such. Those that really go all out with like jungles and tree houses and things, a lot of that gets eaten up, and you just can't put the details in that you might want to. I'm still trying to get access to the silly interior here. I can't seem to get the little button to pop up. It just doesn't want to cooperate. So yeah, unfortunate, but that's, the price of covering it up like this. Makes it tricky. Anyway, so that was Volk Barendust's Borkenbork Island. I hope it gives folks some ideas. I know we're kind of smack in the middle of summer, and this kind of build is probably a inspiration to those looking for like beachside plots or vacation areas, resort type of deal. Even though it looks more like a personal home to some respect, I mean, you can make this like a make this the bedroom and living room and turn this into a kitchen, and then this is library or something. You want to make it more as a personal home, as opposed to like these little cottages where they each have their own bed and all that kind of thing. Very easy to switch it up if you aren't particularly looking for a community plot, if you're looking for more personal. This could be turned into a guild house, a clubhouse, turned into a bar rather than a diner. Or it could be, say it's a base for some kind of military outfit. It looks like it'd be good for like some lookouts, military equipment up top, and have the meeting rooms and such down below, or bunkers or whatever. There's a lot of ways you can go with it. So even if we visit a plot that doesn't necessarily have a theme you're interested in, there's always things you can take from it to modify it or incorporate into something you're planning. And that's what I love about the buildings and stuff. There's always ideas you can use for your own. Okay, so the next place that we'll visit is Rizwin Flower Heart. This is called Rizwin's Piano Bar. And again, here's another good example of how folks have figured out how to kind of modify the entrance, the landing pad, to kind of disguise what it typically looks like. It's not a requirement, so if you can't figure out, or you just are kind of lost on ideas on how to dress it up differently than everybody else, you know, that's okay. We've come across plenty of great, fantastic plots that leave it pretty much as is. But for those of you looking for ideas, you saw the one before. They just kind of basically raised the ground level to the same and just kind of left it bare. This one's actually put in a lot more foliage, so you've got grasses and trees, snow clumps and such. You can see that the dirt is brown that comes up, so presumably that means this is an upside down massive umbrella tree that's being used for the raised ground level here. Down for these little steps, these appear to be mostly obsidian stones with little bits of snow clumps and such thrown in to really dress it up. They've also got some of the icicles edging it, again, to make it give that nice frosty feel. I presume that the hollow crypt is somewhere under here. Now, I would advise, just for politeness sake, if you're going to cover up your hollow crypt at all, make sure that your plot isn't deadly. Don't have a plot where you like get your visitors way up and then they have a chance of falling to their death and then get ported into the ground underneath. Yes, they do have the little return to teleporter option on the toolbar, but it's still just kind of polite. Although I do know there are some players that like to build up little, what they call traps. They'll have like the cage set right over the hollow crypt, so if someone croaks and they end up in a cage, just, you know, kind of like a joke thing. But if you're going to cover up like this, definitely try to make your plot friendly to your visitors. So again, really lovely use of all of the snow clumps and such. There's snow-covered stones. You can see a lot of the snow-covered foliage. And of course, they've got it snowing. Now, if you use any kind of sky option that has precipitation or other kinds of doodlies floating in the air, keep in mind that if you have any kind of custom structures, that animation will come straight through the walls. There's no way to block that out. It's the only, I think, fussy thing to do with the skies that a lot of people complain about when it comes to custom building, is because if they have like a snowy castle that they want to build, if they use the snow actually falls inside the castle. kind of deal. If you can kind of ignore that, then you can get the outer atmosphere going, but just kind of ignore it when you're on the inside. That's the only thing. It's same way with the rain. A lot of people try to make those gloomy mansions, and then they've got the snow, you know, the rain coming straight through, and it throws it a little off. So here's an example. You've got this nice, what looks like a log cabin kind of thing going on, and it'll be snowing inside the building. There's just no way to stop it. First, though, the log building itself. You can see they're using the thorny logs. Takes a lot of them. It's a lot of detail, especially as they'd had to make some of them smaller in size to kind of patch up the gaps for where the roof slants. The roofing itself is travel posters. And then the big fireplace is the Draken fencing, I believe. I don't know what smoke feature they're using. Most people have been using like the cauldrons, but now we have like the toxic barrels and the smoke packs from the cash shop. If you want to invest in that, there's different colors of smokes. Some are more like a stream of smoke, and others are billowy, like a toxic atmosphere kind of thing. Just depends on what you're aiming for, what you can afford, and that kind of thing. So let's go around back, take a better look. Well, it's kind of hard to get a better look because all the trees are blocking my view, but you can see the roof is like 3 parts. It's like a front and a back, and then the middle, the large side. A lot of thorny logs, though. Just the building structure itself that's a lot of pieces to use. So inside, you can see some of it is 2x4s. There's exile floors. There's exile walls. The little seat here is basically looks like 2 hollow domes. Again, we've mentioned chairs like this. A lot of them will try to get away with just using a single dome. It's cheaper that way, it's fewer pieces, but if you use pillows and such like this for the cushions, you have the tendency of them poking through. So using multiple hollow domes and slightly sized smaller, that thickens up the walls of the chair and allows you to kind of get away with sinking in pillows and stuff without the corners of them sticking out. Especially the pink ones that like have the tassels and such. They're a bit more of a pain than the green ones. But we've seen some where they actually use like 3 or 4 layers. They get that really thick and snuggly looking. And again, some use the domes also for the bottom, the base of the chair. This one looks to be using one of the cylinders for it instead. Both work lovely. Over here we have a little sectional. It appears to be just a bunch of Tua pillows. Some go through the trouble of actually trimming the base or even the backs with wood, from pillars to 2x4s to hover park pieces. This one's just using the pillows, and it works fantastic. It's simple, it keeps it minimal pieces, but still you have no question as to what it is. Again, notice how the snow is filling the house, this building. It's a little strange, but if you just kind of get past that, it works great. The table, the coffee table here, I think that is the sad portrait. It's the one with the face of the guy. This kind of like he looks droopy faced. They just flipped it over, if I'm not mistaken, just because of the shape. That's what it looks like. And just put it flat down on the floor, and that's the little coffee table. I love the fireplace. Again, we've seen tons of these, and The approaches are always different and interesting. This one is using the edges of the Draken walls. They have that like metal rivets for the edging. So this is like 3 walls, and they've just layered it in so it looks like it's just a metal mantle, but it's basically the edge of the wall being set inside. Looks really nice. There's the Winterfest fence here, another wall here just kind of inset, and all you see is the edging of that trim. If you want more of a wood look, you'd go with either Exile walls. It's probably the one with the wood. If you want more of a smooth metal, then the Cassian one would probably work best. But I like the little stepping. It gives like some ready-made shelf space for a little display of your collectibles. Got the little bar here. The little kitchenette. I love kitchens. It's probably, again, I've said it many times, it's one of my favorite areas of a house because people tend to give lots of detail to this area. I don't know why. Maybe people just love food or whatever. There's just so many interesting ideas, but you can see this one doesn't fall short on that. The little island here, they've made it an interesting shape. Most of the islands we see are just the regular rectangles, sometimes round ones, but not so often. This is more of a curved one. It's staircase landings for most of the construction of it, including the cabinets and the countertop for the other part of the kitchen. And then inset inside that is the Cassian floors to give it more of a kitchen tile feel to it. It's also used on the countertops here. Notice they didn't go through the trouble of detailing like handles for the doors or adding any kind of drawers. We see a lot of people do that. There's many ways you can do it, lots of different items for it, but it doesn't even really feel necessary. Clearly, you know that there's cabinets here, and presumably that's where the dishes and stuff would be. But you can see you can get away without having to add that detail. So if you're kind of pinched for preserving some of your decor count for something else that you definitely want in, this is a way you can get away with not having to go into that detail. If you do want that, bottle tops, the handles from the vintage beer mugs, even some of the crates and stuff that have handles, those are some of the favorites for cabinet doors. You can see they did use the vintage beer mugs for the handles on the refrigerator. And the refrigerator itself is just a couple of airtight containers. And I suspect, since they didn't use handles for all of the cabinet doors, that's where these other little details were come into play. They were able to make a coffee maker. The coffee maker is basically, travel posters. There's the tablet computer, some book spines or a book spine for, I don't know, the level of water, the little buttons or something, a chew cup, and a bowl. Some use more detail on that, putting in like little detonators for flashy lights and things like that. We've seen some with levers and switches, but there's no mistaking this is some kind of a drink maker. So, if you can get away with less detail, the better. Then you can use it for something else, like the dishwasher here. I presume that's a dishwasher. It could be a trash compactor, for all I know. I'm not sure, but it looks nifty. It's, again, a couple of tablet computers. I think that's the thermometer thingy, a pillar, and a couple of floors, just one size down to make it look like an actual door. The little sink here is interesting. Notice they didn't add anything to make it look like water. A lot of people, including myself, kind of prefer to add some kind of a blue for water, but it's really not necessary. We've seen many empty sinks. They're using one of the curved pieces for the sink faucet itself. Others will go ahead and use the bathroom sink and just inset it so you just see the spout. Some use the garden hose. And there's other pipes and bits that you could use, even the like the floral pipe thingy, there's like, I don't know, two versions on the house. Depending on the theme and how, if you're looking for something orany, that would work. If you're looking for something more drake-y, I think there's the horn. Uh, it's like a long piece, but it's got like a bone thing that kind of looks like an animal skull or something. I've seen that used. Um, I've seen some use just stones and like a little bit of a waterfall coming out if they're looking for more something on the natural side, but also more granite-y, I guess. There's just lots of different ways, but this is a simple. It's again using the calcium floors, just raising it up a little bit, rather than having to inset it, which is a little more complex if they're just using the landings for the top. The stove is pillars, I think, for all of these little end pieces. And I'm not sure what this shiny metal is. I don't know if it's the back of one of the platforms or what. But then the oven part itself is the tablet computer. The buttons or the knobs for the stovetop is 2 cups. For this part here, I think those are some of the tanks. It's either the propane tank or something being inset for that. And then possibly the vent tank for the darker part where it's a little raised. For the little custom teapot, that's a couple of bowls just sandwiched together end to end. The little spout is the tall file. The bulby part is just set inside, and then the detonator, it's the one that looks like a little push thing with the box on the end. They've just got it sunk down, so you just see the handle. Again, we've seen many versions of that. It's always interesting to see how people interpret how to put one together. Over here is their version of kind of a picnic style dining table. Now we do have picnic tables and picnic benches, but this one I like that they've made the effort of making their own. It's basically metal edged 2x4s. Simple, but it looks nice. Over here they've made a pool table. Again, we've seen multiple examples of how one could put one together. A lot of them like to use the Oran wall, not the Oran, the Exile walls, because it's that red for like a felt kind of thing. I think I've seen one or two use green materials, but those are less common. But with the color shifting, I think that would be easier because they could easily color shift this table into a green if you want something more traditional. But this is basically just a flat metal table trimmed with metal edged 2x4s, and then using, it looks like judges' hats, the bottom of it, the base, as the holes for the table. Some use the bottoms of glasses. I've seen a few other things, but nothing off the top of my head comes to mind. But those are a couple of ones. A lot of it depends on how you do the base. Some actually build it solid so they can get away with using different items and not worry about what's sticking out the bottom. This particular one really limits their variety of items they can use for certain things. Like you can see, let's see if I can get my camera to angle just right. like they've done a good job in hiding the file ends. It's the same thing you're using for the spout of the teapot for the balls here. The rack is just 2x4s, and of course the pointy spear for the cue stick. But again, you could get away with different things, and again with the color shifting, you could change up the ball colors pretty easily. We've seen other people use the sporty spheres, some of the bombs. I think there's a protostar bomb that's kind of round. You turn it, you don't see the little pointy end. Domes, shrunk down, can be used. The file is probably the most fave. It's easier to work with. You get away with using just a single piece. So yeah, there's that. Let's see, over here we have the library. Again, this is just using the basic bookshelf. If you don't like the look of it, we've seen many examples of where you can trim or encase the bookshelves inside other materials like hover part pieces, boardwalk pieces, 2x4s, pillars, and that changes the look of them if you don't want to go with the standard. But you can see here it's not necessary. It's just if you have the luxury of being able to spend those extra items, it's one way of changing up the look. Look at the simplified table here. It's just a dome for the base and then layered glass, colored glass at that, on top. Just dresses it up a little bit. They could have left it just the dome, and that would have been perfectly fine, but they just changed it just slightly, made it look a little classier. Over here we have a painting. You guys know that I love those. It's been a while since I made one myself, but I always love seeing other people's ideas and how they put it together. So here we have a little bit of a landscape painting. I think the stone, or the stone, the ground, the grasses, the hill, I think is a thinkerhead or two or three, just based off of what the shapes and some of the lines on it. That's what it reminds me of. Then they've shrunk down some trees, a little bit of grass tufts, snow clumps for the clouds, and for the what I suspect is meant to be the moon. It looks like the edge of a plate. And I presume a book cover like the blue one for the background here. And then they've thrown in some statues. And it looks like a little mini log. Kind of hard to tell. And then just framed with 2x4s, metal edge 2x4s. Simple, but nice. Again, with the paintings, doing these, it's important first to kind of know where you're going to put the painting. Obviously, they had enough space, all the space back behind the painting, to be able to hide anything that they don't want poking out. And extending the frame helps kind of hide the fact that the trees and stuff are pretty far out from the background surface. So it becomes almost like what I call a shadow box. Yeah, I love little details like this. And again, this costs because I can imagine there's at least 20-30 pieces here being used to kind of set up that little landscape. I'm going to forget back here. Kind of hard to see because I can't go actually inside. But you can see they got a washer and dryer back here. It's just Orin floors. There's a detonator for the buttons, a plate for the front of the dryer, probably a book or a travel poster, hammer for the handle possibly. It's again kind of hard to see. Here's another painting, another sort of landscape fantasy theme. These edges here for these clouds, I think these are snowy hills, and you're just seeing the very edges of them. Same way with here, all this little cloudy, poofy mist is the edges of the snowy hills. The moon is the plate again, I think. The little islands, I want to say those are sandbags that they've kind of piled up to make it look like these chunks of floating rocks. And then again, the thinking heads. Now, because of the color of it, it actually might be those thorny bulb trees. It could be those instead, because the color in this looks like a more piece of a wood. But it's either or for both pictures. I don't know what plant they're using here. It looks like one that doesn't have any leaves, so it's a withered something. Maybe it's one of the shades eve trees because they're kind of leafless. You've got the rope bridges. Notice how they've managed to give the illusion of perspective as far as the part of the bridge that is closer to you is bigger, and as it goes out to the island it's smaller in size, but they did it smoothly so it just looks natural. Ladders for this little stair here, and of course they got these little details like the windows and the pillars and the floors for all of the walls and roof there. It's a really cute little scene. I wouldn't doubt someone would love to make an actual plot that looks like this. We've seen a few sky kind of things in the past which were played off really nicely, but this looks pretty fun. Over here is the bathroom. You have the shower stall. Can't actually go in it. The collision prevents you from doing that. If you really want someone to go into the shower, make sure you test it to see if you can actually walk inside it, but this is close enough. It's a bottle for the shower head, and then just the dome represent the thing. They didn't even put a drain in. Some people go for that detail. Some actually put in a little shelf for shampoos and sponges or loofahs or whatever you use. The toilet, gotta mention the toilet. It's probably the next fave thing I pay attention to in a house. Travel posters, a bowl, and I presume like the base of one of the tanks, like a vent tank for the top there, the lid. The little plunger thing or the flusher is the top of one of the bottles. For the sink, I love this one. It's pretty different from what I usually see. Typically, most of the sinks or the vanity places, it's got a full-on base. This one's just using the domes. There's no drain, there's no piping or anything. But they do have, it looks to be like 3 or 4 of the files smushed together to make the spout, and then a couple of bottles for the handles. But I love the uniqueness in it. Now notice that the interior of the dome is different than the exterior. That's because they're using 2 domes. One slightly smaller as the Cassian version, and then the Orin version for the outside. It's a detail a lot of people don't bother with, changing it up like that. Here's a simple bedroom. Notice how they've had to patch in the walls. That's the trouble with making space for windows or doorways. You always have to kind of patch things up. And the neater that you can do it, the more purposeful it looks than just having it kind of slapped together. This looks more uniform. It's a nice way of patching it together and making it look like you meant it to be that way. So here's another bedroom. And we go further up. And you come into a lounge area. Again, just like the sectional below with the Chua pillows, they're just using pillows for this little couch and sectionals. So you have a double, a single, and then the one a little bit longer. It's just using the purple pillows with the long ones as the backing and a couple of throw pillows added onto it. Probably my favorite part in this area is the table. Again, working with layered glass is just a fun thing. You can see how the more layers you have, the whiter it gets. That's why where all of the pieces connect in the center, that's the whitest part. And then as you go out, fewer pieces are overlapping, so it gets lighter in shade. But look at how lovely that looks. It's just 3 of the red framed glass, and then it looks like two or three of the plain, and then just metal edge 2x4s for the legs of it. Simple, but it's interesting, and there's so many designs you can make. I just twist it different or layer it a little differently and it'll make a different pattern. We've seen some where they go and just make a round of it and it looks like a sun or a flower. We've seen a few make specific designs, like when we did the Valentine's Day stuff, we had heart shapes inside it. It's the same way with windows. They're a great place to play around with the layered glass in that way. I love that they managed to put in a skylight here. Again, they had to probably work with the layer, patching the roof together with different pieces, because obviously you can't cut out a section just because you want a hole there. So it becomes a little tricky, but they did a really fantastic job setting in that skylight. See if there's any little bits off to the side that we don't want to miss. Some of this is from Arctera, like some of these frozen bits. They're using a lot of obsidian. Uh, you can see that they do have fab kits. This is one of the biome ones, I think. I don't know which one in particular, but it's just been covered up mostly. Trying to get a good spot. I often, when I'm, especially if I'm coming into a place that I maybe want to showcase somewhere else, I look for places that will give you a good screenshot. Not always easy to do. A lot of people, when they do their landscaping, they don't have that in mind when they're putting together their stones and all of the rocky surfaces and such. Yeah, see, it's an overall shot, but it's like everything's hidden with the trees and stuff, so you can't see the building there. Let me see if I can come back over here. There's a little bit of an overview of the cabin. There's the skylight for that upper room. Just checking to see if there's any bits on the outside that still need to be checked out. Here's another. Now this is an example of using, it's either a waterfall or the winding river. I think it's a waterfall though, just because of how it looks. Being used almost like it's their own homemade hot springs. You can see how they've had to patch it together. It's just the unfortunate thing with using the water bits. This might be a fun one to try and incorporate some of the newer waterfalls if you can afford it. But look at the obsidian stone and all of the little snow clumps. Again, they're keeping it that winter theme nicely, using the winter bushes and trees and some of the regular pines for their evergreens. The candles are from Arctera, I believe. Here's what that snowy hill looks like normally. Again, just checking to make sure, because sometimes you'll find things that maybe like what I call like a little Easter egg. Again, the bones are from Arctera. For a winter plot, a lot of the Arctera stuff is like heaven sent because there's all kinds of ice and snow covered bits and like the plants here, little fern, snow covered ferns and such. We were missing a lot of that for those that really wanted to get into the winter scene. Okay, that's just the wall. Okay, I guess it's just a lot of landscaping. Again, every piece you see out here is hand placed, hand picked, you know, from the snow covered stones to how they've embedded the trees, these slanted stones here, the grass patches, all of that specifically placed down. That's why I envy those that are good with the landscaping, because I think mine's too uniform. It doesn't look, I don't want to say haphazard, because this really looks like it's just meant, like it's just come out of the game world to me. Um, I just, mine looks too much like an organized garden. It's everything's like in a line, or you know, very segregated from each other. There's no looseness or organicness to it. I just make it too, I don't know why it doesn't want to open when I click on it. Anyway, this is the Prefab Home. Um, if you're wondering what this is, I've seen some people use this as an actual water feature, but this is I think it's called the Infused Habanero Bloom. It comes straight from the housing vendor. It's a really strange plant. It does have a little bit of movement on the bud, I think, that's up top. But again, I think most people like it for the funny animation that the roots have. And again, I've seen people use it as uh, water features like waterfalls and such. It's not the easiest thing to work with because obviously the shape is a little strange and there's a lot of stuff you'd end up having to hide. But just depending on how you use it, it could probably be a really fun little deal. Now, we've talked about this in the past with the Oren homes being rounded. Same way with some of the cozy versions of the Exile House and the Granok House. A lot of people find it awkward to work with the rounded walls. And probably the Oren one is the trickiest of the bunch because some of the prefab flooring is a little odd, a little layered up and strange. And you can see that they've done a job of covering most of that. You can see a little bit of it here and some of it right along the edge here. But they've used what I'm not really sure on, but it's the upside down something that they're using for their own little stair step into this space, which I thought was pretty fun. Now the wood here, that's the back of one of the portraits. I think it's the tree one. Um, Again, we've seen people use that for cabinets, tables, shelving, and in this case it's being used as an actual wooden wall. The dining table is just 2x4s for both the legs and the tabletop itself. Very simple, but it looks nice, broad. For the kitchen, it's Cassian floors for most of the cabinetry, and then inset with staircase landings as the cabinet doors. And then I think, Yeah, metal edged 2x4s for the cabinet drawers. For most of the handles, it's the top of the files, I think. And then over here, it looks to be bottle tops. Here we have another example of a painting. It looks like Oran wall for the back just because of the stone look to it. They're using probably the orange sconce for the lighting. There's also an orange one you can use if you want for sun, but I think this is, I don't know if this is supposed to be a sun or a moon. It's one of the two. Looks like knives for the bird, snow clumps for the clouds, and of course the landscaping. It's a little hard to see, so I'm not really sure what they're using for the dirt and such, but you can see they've got bits of overgrowth and trees and such for the woodland area. For dirt, if you're wanting a dirt path or some such, probably sandbags would be your best bet. Uh, Although you could probably get away with, if you actually want like a cobblestone path, some of the Draken fencing would probably work. Um, Things like that. Just looking to see if there's any little details that I'm missing. Here's the pantry. I like their version of the wine rack. It's just curved glass. Notice how they did this. That's one tricky thing about having odd spaces when you're sectioning off your home. They went ahead and utilized it as part of their pantry area. Just kind of walled it up with a little bit of a curved wall. Yeah, there's a little bit of, left over here, but I think that's a clever way of utilizing the space. They could have very easily just boxed that all off completely. Instead, they went with the archway. The stairs are 2x4s. If you're at all familiar with KBT, that's probably a tool many staircase builders use to get it nice and smooth. It's possible to do it without the add-on, but it's way easier with it because you can save the spacing and the rotation and just kind of quickly build it up. This is an example of a really nice spiral staircase. Notice they didn't go through the trouble of adding really any kind of railing. Some people do. Just remember that if you add railing here, that narrows the space. So if there's like a center pole and then the railing, if you make it too narrow, the collision could cause it so that your character either walks above the steps or it doesn't walk on it at all. Makes it impassable. So just double check that. Not only with your character running, but walking as well, because if anyone's going to RP, they will take it to a walk, and just check and double check and triple check your staircases, hallways as well. I've come across a few homes where they'll have some really lovely hallways, and then they add in like, wall pictures or something or shelving, and forget that each time they add more stuff, the collision becomes more narrow and people get stuck, and it makes it awkward. So plan ahead for that. Always double check your spacing for doorways that you might make, that kind of thing, to make sure that your visitors can move around smoothly and not, get stuck or whatever. Okay, so finally we've made it to the place where the namesake comes from. Again, this is Rizwan's piano bar. So here's the bar area, and lo and behold, we have a piano. Now again, whenever I come across a piano, I always check, and you can see this is one of Flower's originals. So I don't know if, because this is called Rizwan Flower Heart, if this is one of Flower's alts, or if this was just a gift that Flower gave to this particular player. But what an amazing piano. Flower is well known on Entity for being the piano, I would assume piano queen, but the go-to person for custom pianos. We've seen them do different types of organs and electronic pianos, but also these more traditional like baby grands and stuff. You can see the detail of how many pieces have gone into these. I think some of the ones that I saw them showcase were up into, you know, hundreds and hundreds of pieces. There's just a lot of detail, and it's things like this that can eat up your decor count like super, super fast. But, you know, who wouldn't want an awesome piano like this? You can see the bench itself is Chua pillows with 2x4s and those fancy ornate pillars, the ones with the little greenery on top for the stool feet. For the piano itself, the keys appear to be books. So you have yellow books for the white keys and blue books for the black ones. I can't tell really what they're using for the lettering. It is one of those deals that the further away you are, the less readable it is. That's why I always zoom in when I come across a piano, because usually it's so small you have to be really up close to see it. Most of the body of the piano is of course the 2x4s, but you can see there's a good amount of exile floors for some of the base of it. There appears to be suitcases for the trimming here. See if I can get a better look inside here. Kind of hard to. You can see all of these little knobs here, which I would presume would be like to tune it or something. That's all Chua cups. And these are what appears to be hanging chains, all of the strings. And then these parts here are hammers. They're hammer heads for the little, I don't know, tension bits or something. And again, Chua cups here. Just the amount of detail is just incredible. Again, they very easily could have left this sitting down so you don't see the interior, but I think the idea is to show just how detailed one can get with that. But how amazing is that? These parts here, I want to say those are bowls, just inset so you don't see the bowl itself, you just see the lip of it, and of course 2x4 here. This here, that's a suitcase again with a little metal bracketry. Again, look at the amount of 2x4s here. That's to allow them, they're having to use these small pieces to be able to make that shape. Crazy amount of time and effort gone into that. Now, probably not next week, but the week after, I'm going to see if I can locate Flower's piano shop plot where you can actually see a number of examples of Flower's work, and see if we can take a look at that soonish. We've seen so many examples in different places. I've got one on one of my plots that they gave me in exchange for some of my work, so it'd be great to show off their whole collection. But yeah, there's just astounding what people can do. Here's a little bench type of thing. It's just I think it's a dome or a cylinder with the rugs on top, the pillows sunk down, and then a shelf being used as, I don't know if that's just a stair step or what. Again, spiral staircase, and that leads to another library room. I love the desk here. We've seen a few different types of desks. This one has a bookshelf for one end, some staircase landing cabinetry on the other end, file tops for the handles, and then they've got some shelving with glass panels, 2x4s. Over here is another example of that dome seat. Again, it looks like they've gone double with it. Might just be a single, but it looks double to me. Using one of the Marauder nets as like a hammock slash cot kind of thing. I like the little extended tray for the drinks and such. Gotta have that luxury thing. And then this clever little aquarium type deal. Usually we see the aquariums that people put together, it's either inside a tank or they actually construct a rectangle shaped glass container. This one takes a little bit more natural approach. It looks to be another one of those tanks just because the glass is curved. But they've inset it inside some of the obsidian stones, so it makes it look like maybe the stones were already there and the house was built around it and they just incorporated into this little water feature here. Again, using moving plants helps feed the illusion that there's actually water moving around in there. We've seen some people use some of the newer steam gliders as like moving fish. But you can see they've got, what's that thing called? The shelark for the little turtle here. If you're looking for jellyfish looking things, the alien tentacle plant is probably the fave for that. But we've seen people make fish out of pillows and strange stuffs. There's probably unlimited to what you can make. Aurora is probably the one that comes to mind quickest for me as far as different types of fishes and things. I think they made like an octopus using the tentacle bits from the Red Moon sets, starfish and shells. A lot of people like to use the plates and bowls and such for the open shell, and they'll put a file in it. It looks like a pearl. There's just a bunch of stuff. And now with some of the newer housing bits, let's see, where is it? Yeah, there's the underwater decor pack that comes with a lot of the different kinds of coral and seaweed plants and even shells that you can use. So if you're going to go for, even if you don't want to go for an actual underwater full-on plot, if you're looking for something along the lines of a really elaborate looking aquarium type of thing, you've got even more little doodads to mess with. So really fun ideas. And again, you know, even if you don't have a place like this, there's all sorts of ways this could be used in a restaurant scene or in the lobby of a business office or a guild hall. It's not strictly left to just a personal home kind of deal. I like how they use this as a chandelier. And notice the table here. They've got the light underneath the table to kind of, I guess, give mood lighting or something. Now, again, the Oren house is often the bane of some builders because they never know what to do with this space here. A lot of people just kind of ignore it and just let you walk down to the bottom room. But I love when people figure out interesting ways to utilize the space here. So they've actually added a flooring and a little bit of a upstairs. And that leads to the bathroom. How clever is that? I love this. The vanity itself is just one of the wood metal crates. It's got the bathroom sink set into it, a bowl with a pillow being used as either a soap or a sponge of some sort. But look at the toilet. Again, I don't know why I'm obsessed with the toilets, but how different is this one? It's an exile sign with a plate set on top of it, so it looks like it's got blue water, kind of glowy. It looks, WildStar-ish. You've got the generator at the back, but how it's just like three pieces, but it's what it is. I love I love the simplicity and the variety we can get from stuff like this. It's just crazy. I don't know why I find that so funny and entertaining, but I do. It's my husband would say it's my toilet humor, but there you go. Again, here we have a lovely little table, simple in design, but look how pretty it is. It's just a single pane of glass for the top, trimmed with 2x4s, and then the legging or the base of it is a couple of curved glass. How simple is that? It's fantastic looking. And I love the couch. I think this is one of the few times I've seen the sandbags being used as the couch cushions. But when you see it, you're like, obviously that's like a perfect choice because they look like little cushions. I think it's 2x4s or staircase landings or some such for the base. Just a little bit of wood there, but it's primarily the sandbags and then some pink throw pillows. But I haven't done that myself, and yet it seems so obvious that that would work perfectly for a couch scenario. Now, I will say that they probably specifically uh, had to consider where to place it. It's not like they've got it pulled away from the wall, and that's probably because, like for instance here, um, the frilly sack end would be sticking out. That would probably be the only thing. If you're going to have it pulled away, you might have to rotate this around and use several to use so that the little end is tucked inside. But same way with these, they've got the little open end sticking out. But being able to inset it into the wall like this, it's hidden so you don't notice. So down we go into the final room. This is just a bookshelf that's been inset and kind of hidden so it doesn't look like a traditional shelf. There's the whole bottom is missing. Here's a massage table. They've got the stones, the oil files. Um, it's a flat metal table with a mattress inset, and then inset in that is the uh, sleeping bags. The little pool or tub or whatever you want to call it. I think again it's one of those tanks. That's the only reason why you can actually set into the water. But you can tell it's a tank because the water is actually curved and framed in obsidian stone. And there you've got that habanero bloom again, the infused one, kind of being used as, I guess, the water source. The only thing that bugs me is the direction of the flow. I think it needs to be flipped so it looks like the water's going down instead of running up. It's probably the only thing, and I don't even know if that's possible because, again, the item itself is a little awkward to work with, so that might have been the only way they could set it up. Or it could be that the one that they used just happens to be poking out here and they decided to build this little water feature around it to make it look like it belonged rather than boxing it or covering it. So there may just not be any choice in the direction of how the water is going. It's something along those lines. Here's another shower. This one's using a drain, the Red Moon vent. Chua cups for the knobs and the spout up top. Here we have another painting. This reminds me of I can't think of the name. Ani's stuff. I don't see a signature, but that's what it reminds me of. Uh, I think they said it was spoons for all of the little stars, and then a snowy bit for the moon, and then just a lot of tufts of grass for the greenery there. Is it flowers? I couldn't remember. I knew it looked familiar because this is a style that looks like something that they gave me in the past. Okay. Well, thank you for confirming. I think it's similar to the one that I got in that they gave me from a while back that I have in one of my galleries. But that was actually signed. So that's why I say I suspect this might be one of Flower's alts. But it's simple, but it's not, because like I said, all of these little bits are individual things, I think. And you can see there's even some animation here. So they've got either like a medical cot or something to give a little bit of a glow. Here's that fun toilet again, just like before. Sink also matches before. And then we've got a little bit of a kind of, I guess, like a day bed kind of thing going on. It's decking pieces, pillows, two pillows here. The stool is actually a functional stool, and then they've topped it with a cushion. Just checking if there's something back here. And then the final bit is, I suspect, the bedroom. So this is where they have their wardrobe. And then here they've made a little, like a full round of mirrors where you can come and pose and check how you look and make sure everything is up to snuff. Here we have those seats that we've seen throughout. Just helps to kind of keep everything similar. Little vanity table. It's basically just a couple of those Oran desks, one on top of the other, one slightly smaller, topped with a travel poster, using some, I think it's the med kits for like little perfume or makeup bits. You've got, it looks like they have a bra sitting there. It looks like it's sticking out funny though. Here the shelf is made out of decking pieces. We've got a similar one on this side. And then the bed, look at this bed. How fancy schmancy. I could see this as some kind of like a vacation resort, tropical theme, mostly because of the what appears to be a fish tank at the back of the bed that's being used as the headboard. Because you got the lily leaf, and you can see there's another little turtle looking thing back here. It's mostly decking pieces for the base, trimmed with some of the Oran fencing, topped with pink pillows to look like it's covered in a comforter type of thing, and then they've got some throw rugs on top. How interesting is that? I've never seen that kind of a setup. All right, Boy, thanks for confirming that. Flowers, really great with the paintings. Like I said, I suspect this is probably one of their alts, because it's got flower in the last name, and we saw like, what, 3 or 4 paintings plus the awesome piano, so I suspect it's one of those. But this is certainly interesting, having the aquarium at the headboard. and great use of the space. I mean, they got several floors out of this area. So yeah, that is that. Interesting build. Certainly, well, that thing doesn't want to open, does it? There we go. Certainly some lovely ideas for both landscaping and other, the buildings, um, the items inside the building, like the kitchen setup, the bathroom, uh, the tables, even the window bits. Bottom right, I don't think there was anything on there. Trying to get up the stairs again. Let's see. This isn't. Is it here? No, gosh. Like lost in this little building and I can't remember where to go. Yeah, see, I don't see. Usually it's like, I think it's like right here. I'm pretty sure on mine in the museum on Javits side, I'm pretty sure it's signed on that one because I want to say it's the exact same painting that I have. I have a copy of it on Excel side, so yeah. But yeah, so that is Rizwan's Piano Bar by Rizwan Flowerheart, suspected to be a flower alt. There we go. Trouble getting out of the doors. But yeah, if you can come in person to any of these plots that we show, whether they're on entity side or Jabbit, I strongly recommend it because, again, while I love doing these tours and showing, linking when people give like screenshots and stuff in the forums and on Twitter, uh, they just don't do these places justice. It's so much more impactful if you can see them up close. Um, but I love doing these tours and stuff because I know not everybody has access to both regions, and I know not everyone has time to go and visit them um, like they would like to. And it's a good pastime for, like, say, later today when they do the maintenance. Uh, Well, she's really nice. She's really nice. Like I said, I'm gonna have to locate her piano shop because I'm pretty sure she's got a plot on Entity where it's just the piano stuff. Um, I'll look it up later and we'll make sure that we visit it the next time we're on Entity side. But yeah, I like doing the videos, especially for those that maybe can't get into the game all the time. But still are able to watch a video, on their phone or something. They at least get a little bit of a sneak peek, and it preserves a lot of these builds for posterity's sake, because we do have a lot of builders, myself included, that have had builds in the past that are no longer actually still live. They've been replaced or remodeled. Um, like I have a lot of videos from my time back in beta even. So those places don't exist anymore. So it's nice to be able to preserve these, even if a lot of people do get to come and look in person and don't have to follow my videos to see that. It's kind of a keepsake to be able to say, well, this is what my plot used to look like, and now this is what it looks like now. So yeah, it's Oh, is it? Well, yeah, I might reach out to her and say I'd like to. Of course, she may be remodeling for all I know. But yeah, I'll see if I can reach out to her sometime. See if she'll unlock it for us, just for that day, maybe. But yeah, so hopefully you guys have gotten some good ideas. Again, even with the building construction, it's always interesting to see what people use for their roofing, for the walls itself, how they figure out how to make holes for the windows and the doors, and keeping it all nice and everything. Um, Different structures like the chimney and everything even is it's all food for thought when it comes to, building your own place. Even if you're not planning to build a log cabin, at least if you're looking for something that's got that woody look, that there is the option of using the thorny logs um, as an alternative to some kind of a building material. Granted, you will have to use lots of them just because of the way they're made, unless you don't mind all of the gaps that might be in there. But yeah, lots of ideas, lots of great building techniques. Um, so a perfect place for inspiration and such. So I hope you guys had fun with both of these plots this week. And remember, we do this every Wednesday, barring any troubles or illnesses that aren't scheduled. Uh, Not that I schedule illnesses, but I mean, things happen that, prevent you from following through on your plans. Like yesterday, right in the time when I would have been streaming, if I had been streaming through the week, our internet went down. Apparently, they decided to do some maintenance that they didn't let us know about. So we had no internet for most of the day yesterday. And I was glad it wasn't today because that would have thrown things off now. So, yeah. Anyway, if you can, join us next week. We will be back on Jabbit with a couple more homes for you guys to check out with me. Again, it doesn't matter what region or what faction you're associated with. If you know of a plot that you feel is worth having a look at that we have yet to tour, feel free to send along a message to me in game or via Twitter or whatever to let me know, give a suggestion. I'm happy to take those. I do have a listing, like a queue of some sort that I keep track of, and I pull off of that when I have the necessity to do so. But I'm happy to take up suggestions, even if it's your own plot, a friend's plot, a guildmate's plot, a stranger's plot. If you just happen to run across it yourself and say, hey, I haven't seen this one toured, let's send along the suggestion. I'm open to those. Just keep in mind that I can't guarantee when I'll get to it. Again, it depends on how detailed each plot is and how long it takes. And since we only do this once a week, it can take a while to get to it. If you know for a fact a plot is maybe getting ready to be demolished or remodeled and you want me to catch it before it's gone, be sure to make note of that so I'll pay more attention to it and try to get it in sooner. But generally speaking, it could take, a month or two before I actually reach the point of getting to the plot because there's a lot of plots in line. But yeah, so again, a reminder, there is maintenance today. It's supposed to last about 5 hours, so prepare yourselves. If you need something to look at in the meantime, of course, we have hundreds of videos you can revisit, all sorts of themes, even some of my own personal works if you get bored seriously on that. And don't forget the community housing guide, the PTR version. For those of you that are interested in how the community system may or may not work when it comes live, what all it entails, what kind of privileges and responsibilities are involved in it, maybe even the costs. I'm not sure if they cover that or not in that particular guide, but that is in the housing subforum, I believe. There's also a section in the PTR that discusses a lot of the issues and bugs and questions that people have been throwing out. So if you want to get caught up on that upcoming feature, I really recommend it. The Community Housing Guide is by Thefia, and it's been running close to the top of the threads, so it should be easy to find. So I won't link it per se, but there you go. So I hope you guys had fun. I certainly did. Look forward to seeing you guys next time. In the meantime, good luck with your projects, whatever they may be, and have a safe time. See you guys later. Bye-bye.